everyone, and thank you for joining us for Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd, and I'll be your host for the next hour of answering your gardening questions. Once again, I'm joined on the panel by our experts from Nebraska Extension and Landscape Services. We have Wayne Onosaur answering our insect questions.
Good evening, Kim.
Bill Kreuzer, all those turf questions.
Hello, everybody.
Kevin Corus, rots and spots.
Howdy ho.
And Jeff Culbertson is going to answer all of the horticulture questions.
All of them.
You know, and we'd love to have you join us. Just give us a call at 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 1-800-676-5446. Pictures and emails go to byf@unl.edu. We do answer those on a future show. When you send us those emails, please tell us as much information as you can, including the part of the state where you live. Don't forget to follow us this week, during the week, on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the Backyard Farmer website. So let's take a look at some sort of fallish samples here, Wayne, with our state flower looking very sad.
Yep. We have a gall here on the stem. You can see it's around midway up the stem. It's a round gall, so we call it a ball gall, and this one's caused by the goldenrod gall fly. Now, it's not the only one that'll hit goldenrods. Then we have this one here, and notice it's up at the top. It's more elliptical and not so round. This one is caused by the goldenrod gall moth. So we have two different orders of insects. We have a moth and a fly here. And there's another one that will cause rosetting on the top of a stem, and that one's caused by a midge. At this point, there's nothing you can do about them other than, as Fred would say, enjoy nature's wondrous pageantry. Otherwise, it's maybe fun to show off that you know about galls on some of our native flowers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, Bill.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's that time of the year. We're thinking about seeding our lawn and recovering from the summer stress. And my word of caution today is buyers beware. This is some seed I just got from a big box store right before the show today. And, you know, it looks great from the outside until we turn around to that backside of the seed and we look what's inside. And, you know, this one's quick green up, and it is 92.5% annual ryegrass. So we can put it in the ground. It's going to look good for, you know, a month. The frost will come and it will die. So don't waste your money planting, you know, bad seed like this. This other seed here also has a little bit of perennial ryegrass in it. And that's not a terrible grass to have in a seed mix. And when it's about 10% of the mix, it kind of has a nurse crop to help the desirables like our Kentucky bluegrass in western Nebraska and our tall fescue in eastern Nebraska. So, you know, get good seed. This stuff isn't even cheap. Make sure you're getting, you know, the stuff from a good supplier. It's going to cost about the same, and it's going to survive and prosper and have great lawn because of it. Whereas this stuff is just going to start dying, and next year we're going to be fighting to get it right back again anyways.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Okay, Kevin, the pot is bigger than you are.
It is, yeah. So I'm here with my buddy, the Boxwood, and he's sick. And he has a fungal foliar blight disease called Volutella blight of Boxwood. And before our Nebraska viewers start getting too much of in a stink here, we don't really have this here. It's not super common. We have the propensity to get it in the southeastern part of the state, but some of our more southern viewers in Kansas, southern parts of Iowa, and into Missouri might actually have to worry about this in their landscape. So it's called Volutella boxwood blight. It's not the big bad boxwood blight that everyone's talking about nowadays. It's a different fungus. It's not as severe, and can be controlled simply by removing the dead limbs and removing that dead material. So one of the diagnostic characteristics of this fungal disease is the pink spores that it'll create on the undersides of the leaves. And I have a couple of little leaves in my hand here, and by the power of zoomage, hopefully we can come in and see on one of the yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to see, but the one that my finger's pointing to now is a little bit more salmon pink than this other one, which is a little bit more brown. And if you're looking at this with your naked eye, what you'd be able to see is little pink fuzzy, cottony growth on the underside of that leaf. And when you see it and it's that salmon pink color, that's a really good indication that it's this Volutella blight. And like I said, if you can try to water the soil only, try to keep the foliage dry, and reduce the relative humidity and the moisture levels in the canopy, even pruning to allow for more airflow and more sunlight exposure, you can help reduce this disease. And again, not super common here. It's something that you deal with as you go further south, but something to keep an eye on.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. All right, we have a brewery in the corner over here.
Well, I'm going to start off with this sample here. What I brought in is our native euonymus, Eastern Wahoo, euonymus atropurpuris. So it's just getting ready to start to do its thing. So its flower, the flower in the spring is not really showy, but in the fall the leaves start to turn pink, and then this fruit, this capsule, turns pink and kind of then to red, and then fades to kind of to a white. So it's attractive. It's kind of a nice forest shrub. So especially if you have, it tolerates a little bit of shade and a little bit of sun. I have 2 plants in my yard that get a little both, and they do pretty well. So easy to grow plant for Nebraska.
And it is beautiful when it's in seed and fall color.
Yeah.
All right, Wayne, you get the first picture. This is a viewer who has a maple, unusual cut, and wondering if it is insect damage. So he sent us some really great pictures, and then he did a little more sleuthing, and he found the culprit. What is that?
We have a number of what we call gurgling boars, and they're in oak, they're in maple. The big thing is you see the evidence, and there's not much you can do about it because they're inside. Notice they're boring through the center of that stem. That is not one of the transportation tissues that we're going to be getting an insecticide through that's systemic. So there's really nothing you can do about them once they're in there, other than to clean up parts of the tree or the plant that are unsightly.
All right, and I'm assuming they overwinter somewhere.
That's going to depend on species.
Yep, exactly. All right. Your turn.
Okay.
The first of many Creeping Charlie questions.
Sure.
He thinks that's what it is.
Yep.
And he wonders how to control it.
Well, it's a common question, especially this time of year. If it is Creeping Charlie, it's a member of the mint family, so the stems will be square. And differentiate it from common mallow, which would look kind of similar to that, is that it's not spreading, it's spreading from the nodes that run along the surface, whereas mallow will just kind of creep along the surface. Both of them you can kill this time of year. It's a perennial. We'll wait for our first frost, and then we'll go out with application of a post-emergence herbicide. The most effective ones contain the active ingredient trichylpyr. If you can find that by itself, it's honestly better than when it's mixed with other herbicides. Generally, we say, you want to mix, but by itself it's actually more effective. Otherwise, if it is part of a mix, that's going to be your second best way to try to kill that weed, and maybe a couple applications if required.
All right, and then keep that healthy turf.
Keep the healthy turf. That's the most important part.
All right. Kevin, you have a whole pile of lilac questions. We've had several this year. Our first one is from David City and is doing that. And I think you maybe even had a sample. And then
I did.
Yeah.
I think it was the first sample I brought in this year.
Yeah.
And this first picture here is definitely showing what I assume is, it's just basically lilac wilt, which is caused by a bacterium, rather, a Pseudomonas bacterium. It looks a lot like fire blight, which attacks our rosaceae plants, so our apples and crab apples and pears and things like that. So it looks very similar to that, but it only attacks lilacs. And then this picture that we're seeing now, I think is something different. That's maybe either a nutritional thing or perhaps even spider mites, where you're seeing what looks to be some chlorosis on the upper leaves, interveinal. Looked like the veins were a little bit still dark green. So it could be just some iron chlorosis or even some spider mites. I would check for some insects on the underside of the leaf. I wouldn't be as much concerned about that one as that first picture, which is definitely the bacterial blight. Looks like that whole plant is completely dead. We've been seeing that on lilacs across all of Nebraska. So if you have it on a plant that's not completely dead like that, you can still prune it out, but make sure you prune those dead limbs out at least 6 to 12 inches below where you see the dead leaves, and you can hopefully keep what's left of the tree.
All right, thank you. All right, now we have a question about a plant,
Okay.
ID.
Okay.
And this is in Omaha, and you just happen to have one on purpose.
Yeah.
This guy found this along the bike path, and it bit him and then caused all sorts of bleeding on his arms.
Right. It looks like we have hops, which is what I brought in here this evening as well, and you can see the fruit starting on the vine here. And the stem and the leaves are rather coarse and rough. And so if you get into it, especially with the softer skin of your arms, if you don't have long sleeves on, it can cause some problems with your skin. So that's probably what the deal is there. It's not poisonous. It's going to be, I think in his email or in his question, it was a short thing. But anyway.
Right. Yeah. So we'll keep our eye on whether that is becoming invasive along the river corridor.
Right.
All right. Well, earlier this season, Bill renovated his lawn, and he's graciously allowed us to take a look at how he did it. For our first feature tonight, Bill details a summary of the process of installing new turf in his front lawn.
Everybody has issues with their lawn from time to time, and my lawn here was no different. And so in this fourth part of this series, we wanted to look at the steps that we've taken from our spring seeding to our summer management to now what we'll do this fall to make sure we'll have a great lawn for years to come. And the first thing we did is we needed to assess, why is this lawn failing? What are the problems that I had with it that wanted me to renovate it in the first place? And to kind of recap, the first problem we had was we had some big dog spots. I have a large dog and I had a lot of dead grass because of him. We also had issues with shade, which we can really see in the fall as the sun angle is a little bit lower. We had some ruts, and then we had bluegrass, which is a grass that requires a little bit more maintenance than I wanted to put into it. So this spring we took the task of trying to renovate this lawn with a new variety of turf type tall fescue. And some of the steps that we did was to scalp down the lawn, go buy some quality seed, and then cut that seed in with a good seeding machine, overseeder. We rounded up the bluegrass that was there, and then we controlled weeds with some pre-emergent and post-emergence herbicide, which is essential for our spring seeding to be successful. Then I fertilized a couple times this year and kept it watered, and the lawn came in really, really well. We struggled with some summer diseases, which is typical when you spring seed, and now the fall is here, and we have a couple little spots, and we're going to want to fix those spots because the weather is really ideal this time of year to seed any kind of problems we may have encountered from the growing conditions this summer. And so what we're going to want to do is go into those little areas, be it a dog spot, an area of some disease, some death, maybe from a slip and slide in the heat of the summer, rake up that area, put that seed into the ground, kind of bury it maybe a 1/4 inch deep, sprinkle a little starter fertilizer onto it, and then keep it watered. If it's a small spot, consider just using a hand can and watering a couple times of the day. If our lawn is just thin, let's consider putting down some fertilizer to really help to build that density. The grass is really loving the weather conditions we have right now, with the drier air, the cool nights, and our cool season grasses are really starting to flourish. And so going out with some fertilizer in September is probably the best application we can do each year to recover from that summer stress and get us on course to have a great lawn next year. Finally, if we do get a lot of weeds this year, if they're annual summer weeds like crabgrass, we can go out and do nothing because they're going to die soon. And they're really hard to control. And so if we have crabgrass or any other annual weeds, we'll continue to mow it. If we have broadleaf problems with perennial weeds like bentgrass or creeping Charlie, now is when we'll start to make successive applications of herbicides to kill those weeds. And so using these steps, we can have a nice, great lawn into the future.
The great thing about those tips in lawn renovation is that it really works even better with the fall planting. But you can still try it in the spring if you remember to be diligent to keep those weeds down, keep a sharp eye out for those diseases that might pop up during the summer months. All right, you get the next picture question, Wayne. This is a viewer who sent us a picture of a beetle and a moth. And he is actually wondering what both of them are, and is there any control necessary of either? And we do appreciate the penny.
The penny is nice for scale.
Yep.
The beetle, if you look real close, right behind the head, on what we call the pronotum, there's a little indentation there, and that tells us that is a carrot beetle. It gets that name for reasons other than bothering your carrots, generally. They're usually not a pest. They like soils that have lots of organic matter in them, or sandy soils, which a number of soils in our state have. And that moth which when we looked at it, if you look really close on the front, there's that long looking beak. And what we figured out after a lot of discussion was that's a green cloverworm adult moth. There's a lot of those flying right now, and usually you don't need to control those. They're controlled by diseases or parasitic insects.
Or birds.
Yes, great food for birds as well.
All right. Thank you, Wayne. All right. We have a viewer who says she has a rotten yard.
Looks rotten.
Yeah. They're in sun. Her yard is in sun for most of the day. Looks great by spring. Then it looks like this. They do have 2 dogs. They have dug up looking for grubs, have not found them. The patches pull. So what do you think's going on here?
This year has been a year for grass to die. With the heat and humidity and the wet spring, we've seen pretty much everything kill grass. And so honestly, it's too hard to tell just based on that picture what that is. It could be root diseases like necrotic ring spot or summer patch that may be causing the leaves to pull up because the roots are rotten through. It could be some other diseases like pythium. It's a lot of things it could be. So I wouldn't treat for any of those. Send a sample in, try to get some kind of confirmation from my colleague over here on my left, and figure it out that way. My bigger question is, are you irrigating the lawn? If you are you over irrigating? Because it seems like, it looks like it's been over irrigated, and if not, it could be the natural rain and the dogs, I'm sure, aren't helping. So it's probably a lot of things.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Time to reseed. Kevin, this is our very first question about hawthorns that are looking dreadful. This is a thornless cockspur hawthorn. I think he has a picture also. He's saying yellow, black spots. Wonders if it can be treated now, or is there something he can do in the spring to keep this from happening?
Yeah, I don't see as many of the spots as I would expect to see with Hawthorn Rust, but this is probably Hawthorn Rust. And when the leaves start to turn yellow like that, the rust lesions will actually be dark, like he's explaining, some black spots. When the leaves were green, I'm guessing those spots were actually a bright orange. It's probably a rust. Can't do anything about it now, unfortunately. But you can provide some protection in the spring. There are fungicides available. You just need to find a product that's labeled for firethorn and for firethorn rust. I believe if you look for a product with an active ingredient of propiconazole, that'll provide some good protective control. But that's in the spring. Kind of as those leaves are emerging is when you want to protect. So what you're basically seeing now is just early senescence because of infection from the rust. Again, it was hard to see from that picture the exact rust lesions, but that's probably what it is. That's a very common disease here. So.
All right, and I know that you cut a bunch of them down on campus because you just gave up the ghost a few years ago.
Yeah, we had, hawthorns years ago was the choice over crabs, and then that rust has moved in and caused problems ever since.
All right, you have a potato problem instead, Jeff.
Okay.
This is an Omaha viewer, red Pontiac and Kennebecs, applied 10-10-10 at planting, and got these.
Yeah.
Look like they belong on a freak show.
To me, I don't see any disease on there. And what I would suspect, with potatoes is you really need to till, you need to have very fine soil. And if you have a lot of clods, if it's a clay soil, if there's gravel, if there's anything in there, that can really distort the potatoes themselves. So, I don't see any disease issues there. I think it's just making sure we really do a good job in tillage next year.
All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, you have a question from, we don't know where from, but it's a pin oak with leaves dropping off in clusters. Turning brown and dropping off in clusters.
Sounds like the picture from earlier, only it'd be a different species of twig girdler,
Yeah.
oak twig girdler. Again, the same thing. There's not much you can do other than pick up or trim off any of the pieces that look unsightly.
All right, excellent. Turf question, only this is a perennial plant, which is violets. And the viewer thinks that we talked about this as being an annual weed. I don't believe we have ever called that an annual because it is most definitely not. But he's wondering how to control it now that we're into the fall.
Yeah, it is a perennial, and so it's something that we want to control this time of year as the plants start moving sugars down deep to get ready for the winter. And so they're hard to control. It might need a couple applications. Generally, they occur in shaded areas, so make sure that you have the right grass there. But if you do need to control this year, a lot of the three-way type products will do an okay job. Again, it might require a couple applications.
All right, and if you have too much shade, let the violets win.
Yeah, I mean, it's ground cover. It's fine.
All right. Kevin, we have several viewers who have sent us pictures of shroom-like things on the trunks of trees. And they're always, the question is always, is the tree going to survive, or what's going on with the shroom on the trunk?
So the biggest thing of concern there is the tree might actually survive. It's not going to thrive. But what's concerning is that if that tree is large and it has limbs that are hanging over an area where there might be kids playing, or a house or a garage or an expensive car or something like that, I'd be concerned about the stability of that tree, because big fungi that produce those big fruiting bodies on the outside of trees are wood-rotting fungi, and what they're actually doing is they're deteriorating all of the inner wood of the tree and the large branches and all of that. So it becomes really structurally unstable. So if you get some nasty storms that come through with high winds, the whole entire tree or limbs could fall off when you see something like that. So the tree may actually survive with that infection for a number of years. But it's the structural stability at that point you need to be worried about. And if it's in a precarious position, you might need to think about removing the tree and replacing it.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Jeff, surprise lilies are still blooming on campus, which is amazing. This particular person would like to know whether you can grow them from seeds, or are they really mostly a bulby thing?
You know, it would be mostly a bulb is what you'd want to do. That way you'd have a consistent bloom and a consistent plant. You know, from seed, it's really hard to tell what you're going to get. And I think you'd be more satisfied with the plant if you just grew it from the bulb.
All right, they are pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very nice.
Welcome back to Backyard Farmer. You still have time to get your questions answered. Just give us a call at 1-800-676-5446. Later on in the program, we're going to take a tour of 9 Mile Prairie outside Lincoln. Right now it's time to start that lightning round, and no, you may not pass, and yes, you must actually answer the questions. Jeff.
Yes, ma'am.
An 80-year-old jade plant this person has, and the leaves are falling off, and they want to know what to do to at least keep the plant, if not all the pieces.
They could look at trying to repot the plant. I guess that would be my suggestion at this stage, and not panic. If it's 80 years old, let's see about repotting it.
All right, excellent. We have somebody else who says their cucumbers are producing double cukes from a single flower. Any idea why that would be happening?
They're just very fortunate people, so they're doing something right, so congratulations.
When is the best time to transplant asparagus? And this is from Fremont.
I would do it in the spring. So let's plan on springtime. Make sure you keep a good eye where the plants are right now.
All right. Is it better to till the vegetable garden in the fall with some leaves in it and till it again in the spring, or do something different?
Well, they could certainly do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with adding compost or leaves, organic matter to it this fall, and then kind of do a light tillage in the spring. So that would be fine.
All right. Is it possible to straighten a tree that was planted crooked?
If it's a very young tree, you could, yes.
All right.
A lot of water and be very careful.
And stand there and hold it.
Yeah, hold it, that's right.
Okay, you ready, Kevin?
Absolutely.
A person who has both peonies and bee balm in the same garden, and they have powdery mildew, and they want to know what to do about it.
Again, you can actually hose off powdery mildew with a soaker hose, but then also try to increase the sun exposure and airflow to those plants.
Will brown patch in the lawn go away with the first freeze?
It will possibly arrest the development of that disease, but you might not kill the bacteria or the fungus. It'll come back again next year. I mean, if you freeze, the grass isn't growing anyway, so it's kind of a weird question.
All right. How about rust on beans? Does that overwinter in the soil, or is there a host plant?
Kim, you always do this to me.
You can pass.
I'm going to have to pass because I don't know. I
Is there any word on downy mildew and impatiens this year? Last year it was the hot topic.
Yeah, it went crazy last year. No, I haven't seen a lot of it.
Okay, anthracnose in oaks. Is there a control in the fall, or is it a spring deal?
No, it's a spring deal, and there are some fungicides you can apply, but it depends on the conditions in the spring. You probably won't see it again if it's hot and dry. That's your friend. Rake up and remove your leaves this year.
Excellent, nice job. You ready, Bill?
Yep.
Speaking of Bermuda grass, we have someone who said Trimac did not kill it in their bluegrass. Did not kill the Bermuda in the bluegrass. What will?
Roundup? No, not. That'll be more. But it's gonna. Hopefully, a hard winter. Next year, it'll be Roundup when it's actually growing. So it's not really growing right now. It's gonna start slowing down. So it's gonna be tough to do.
So the
You
Roundup.
can get Pilex as a new herbicide, but it may be hard to get to kill it.
Okay, so it'll also kill the bluegrass, yes,
The Pilex won't. It's selective.
but the Roundup will.
The Roundup will kill it all.
All right. You have brand new sod just laid. How often to water it?
Until those roots start taking hold, you want to water a couple times a day, maybe 2 or 3 times, depending if it's sandy, a little bit more often. If it's not, if it's a cloudy day, less often. So kind of based on the sunlight.
Okay, is it time to aerate now before overseeding a lawn?
Sure.
What is the height of the last mowing before you put the mower away for the winter?
Just keep it the same. We talked about changing it around, but just keep it the same. It's easy. It works.
Okay, do you recommend only using buffalo grass or bluegrass or fescue in a mix, or a mix?
If you get new tall fescue varieties, they can mix pretty well together, but it's hard to really know that without really knowing the seed. So talk to a good seed distributor, not just a, kind of a
Person.
person who doesn't really know.
Okay, all right. Okay, Wayne.
I guess whipped into shape like the rest of them.
A Carney viewer has what they have identified as milkweed beetles or milkweed bugs. They want to know, are they beneficial?
Not to the milkweed plant. The larvae bore in the stem and the adults will feed on it. So if you're looking to support monarchs, they don't do so well with the competition, but anything you might spray on there to kill them might hurt the monarchs.
In other words, you're toast. All right.
Hand picking.
A Broken Bow viewer has billions of white-winged moths that flew near an alfalfa field. Any idea?
Might be the Virginia tiger moth. They start white. They'll have an orange underside. There's also the salt marsh moth, which is also white. Nothing to necessarily worry about.
Okay. A Humboldt viewer wants to know whether mud daubers are beneficial.
Well, they stock their nests with spiders. So if you're a spider hater, then yes. If you want those spiders around to catch other insects, then no.
Speaking of which, are brown recluse spiders prevalent in southeast Nebraska?
Southeast Nebraska is the northern extent of their natural range.
So yes. All right. Nice job.
Still low score
All.
game.
It wasn't too bad. Jeff, what has Gladys brought us for her plant of the week?
She brought us a selection of dahlias today. So we have kind of a collection of different types of dahlias. So she reminds us that they're a bulb, they're not hardy in Nebraska. And so they bloom from giants to minis. She has some that are 4 to 6 feet tall. They like a lot of sun, they like water, and they like to be fertilized. So there's many kinds, lots of selections. I've had mixed luck with dahlias at home. My wife likes dahlias, so we've had a couple years. They've done pretty well for us, but they can be a little tricky. You gotta have a green thumb and pinky, and maybe all 5 fingers need to be green.
Perhaps even your arm.
Yeah, right.
But that is a beautiful combination.
Yeah.
And I suspect that she probably has to even stake some of those big ones to keep them from flying.
Yeah,
all
you're
over
right.
the
This
place.
would be with these large flowers, a good one to have plant stands that you would, put out there when they're small. So
Excellent. Well, thanks as always to Gladys for sharing the beauty of her garden with us. All right, Wayne, you get the next picture question. This is a Grand Island viewer. She says, can you identify these on her zucchini?
You don't always think of zucchini as a squash bug target, but it definitely is. And these are the nymphs feeding away. And really, you gotta get something with either permethrin, probably your best bet. and you got to make sure you get the undersides of those leaves, or you need to catch them in the egg stage. They're really easy to squash when they're in those shiny eggs that can't move.
That are on the underside, right?
They're on the underside.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Turf, Bill. This viewer has been battling this all summer. She says it looks like grass to start with, and then it shoots this 2-foot stem with these seed heads on it.
Yeah, that looks like windmill grass. It's kind of cool, distinctive, because it has the heads kind of go at 90-degree angles from the stem. It is a warm season perennial, and you really can't control it now. It's a perennial, and it's going to, towards the end of its summer season, so control is going to be limited. You use something like Tenacity is the only herbicide I could find that controls windmill grass. Okay, and you're going to want to do that in the middle of summer when the grass is really growing actively. So right now, just mow it and watch out for it next year.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Kevin, this is east of Waverly, and this viewer has 3 healthy concolor firs planted in 2006, and he has another one that's been replaced, and it's doing this, and it's a little dark, but I think you can see the sap glob on the trunk. And then this is a second viewer with concolor who has these browning things showing up.
Okay.
So you want to talk a little bit about canker in trunk maybe, or
Yeah,
whatever's going on
it doesn't
here?
look too severe there, and some of that dieback there in that picture looks like it's kind of in that inner canopy. It could be a shading issue or something, but when you see that pitch on the trunk, that's a good indication of some kind of a physical injury. The firs and the spruces will do that in response to many different things. But since you're not seeing a whole lot of dieback in the rest of the canopy, my guess is it's the result of some kind of a physical wound. It's hard to speculate what would have caused that, but I don't think there's anything that you can do at this point other than if there is a wound that's noticeable that's bleeding out that pitch, just to leave it uncovered. You don't want to cover it with anything. You want to leave it open to the air and encourage that plant to seal itself, and hopefully it won't be an issue.
All right, and we were talking, Jeff, off air that concolor is maybe not the choice that we thought it was originally.
Yeah, there's some good choices out there. Doug fir does very well. We have some Korean fir on campus that do very well. So there's some good firs out there. Historically, concolor with the nice blue needles was kind of everyone's choice. So.
All right, thanks. Now you have 2 maple questions.
Okay.
From 2 different viewers. One has kind of variegated leaves, and the leaves are lighter in color, and they've done some iron by drilling holes 12 inches apart and adding an iron supplement to the soil, but it looks like it's getting worse.
Sure.
So they're wondering, are they on the right track to save these trees? They're red. They're both red maples from
Right.
these different viewers.
There are several species. I have a Carpinus, a hornbeam at home that's doing this kind of late summer, early fall chlorosis. Typically, the issue with this is our pH. Soil pH is the issue. And so they're not absorbing a particular nutrient. Many times it's magnesium, but it could be iron. But, if they're not doing one, then they're probably not doing several. So, the big thing that you need to look at is, again, not many of us have check our pH of our soil before we plant. So I would start looking at, if we were serious about doing the long-term thing, would be to start adding some compost, an inch or 2 periodically, at least once a year, good organic mulch, clearing the sod away from the drip line of the tree, so increasing that for the roots, and that will help. You'll slowly lower the pH a little bit, but it's hard. Rock talks about that ocean of our soil.
Right.
It's hard to change the pH with one little drop, so it's a long-term project.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, a long time ago, our state was covered in tall prairie grasses and wildflowers as far as the eye could see. Thankfully, there are a few places that have been preserved so that we can still enjoy it. One of those places is just outside Lincoln, and it's called 9 Mile Prairie. Right now, we're going to take a short tour.
Nine Mile Prairie has been used for university research since the 1920s. It's actually only been owned by the university since the early 1980s. Back in the 1920s, when the famous ecologist Weaver was doing early prairie work out here, this was privately owned farmland, and then most of this area became part of the Air Force Base when this was a Strategic Air Command base. And then the Lincoln Airport Authority sold the land to the university back in the early 1980s. So that's how it's been protected over the years. The incredible thing about visiting a tallgrass prairie is there's something happening the entire season. So the first flowers, like the wild indigo and some of the prairie violets, are going to be flowering in early April. And there'll be something flowering throughout the growing season. And we're going to move more into the members of the sunflower family later in the season. So we're starting now in mid-August just to see the goldenrods and the sunflowers and the asters starting to come into flower. So there's a seasonal progression just like you would have in a well-designed home garden. I think from an aesthetic side, and everybody has their own aesthetics, but it's this balance where the grasses make up 60 or 70% of the mass, but then you've got, well, in your average square meter, your average square yard, we're going to have about 20 different species of plants. So there's other stuff packed in, and that's changing over the growing season, what flowers you're going to be seeing. The grasses are also changing over the growing season. We think of the tall prairie grasses like big blue stem and Indian grass and switchgrass as being the prairie grasses, and they are. But you also have cool season species like June grass and porcupine grass that are coming in earlier in the season, and they're kind of done with their show by now. Wild rye, because of a heavy rainfall this year, has been flowering later than it normally would. We can still find wild rye seed heads out here. And then you're going to find some other smaller prairie grasses that are warm season grasses like side oats grama and prairie dropseed starting now that round out the picture with those big tall grasses. If you think of this whole landscape, except for occasional wetlands and a few trees along the river courses, like in Wilderness Park, this was a prairie landscape when the surveyors came here in the 1850s, say. And very little of that native prairie is left. So we got to remember that this botanical diversity here is part of our heritage in terms of a genetic resource. The value of 9 Mile Prairie, or any of these tallgrass prairie remnants, part of it's aesthetics. It's a beautiful, diverse, heterogeneous place to spend a sunny afternoon, especially in the fall. Part of its conservation. This is our heritage. These are species that we have that used to be common, many of them, and now are rare.
You know, as Dave said, those grasses and wildflowers really are a part of our heritage. And the great thing about them is that many of them can be easily incorporated into your outdoor living spaces, creating something natural, beautiful, pollinators, fall interest, all the stuff that we love to do, except for turf, Bill. And rots and spots. Well, some of us like to do. All right, so we have an interesting picture for you. This is actually from a Marshall, Kansas viewer. And they're seeing this damage on the underside of the branches. Initially, we thought maybe it was a weird creature. What is that, Wayne?
You might consider it a weird creature depending on who you are. This is something we're only going to see every 17 years. This would be some of the leftovers from our 17-year cicada emergence that happened earlier this year. That's from where the females would have inserted an egg as they went along that branch. Every one of those spots is where an egg was deposited.
Interesting. So will that branch die, or what's going to happen?
It can heal over.
Okay.
You give it time.
Or it can die.
Or it can die. If it dies, just prune it, or I guess I'm quoting people tonight, and as Lauren would say, rogue it out.
All right. Pretty cool looking, though. Very cool. All right. This is a Bruning, Nebraska viewer, Bill. She has what she's calling a mystery weed, and if our viewers can probably see that thready thing going through there. It's not the marigold. That's not the weed. She is wondering what that is and how in the world you control it.
I think it's kind of a cool weed because it doesn't affect our turfs. It is dodder, and it's an annual, but the cool thing about it is it's actually a parasitic plant, so it's living off the other plants. And turf grasses don't actually get it, so it's more of our broadleaves and our ornamentals, and not the tree bark, but the tree leaves can get it. And so one way to really to control dodder is through years of making sure to try to keep it out. So hand pulling, it needs, when the seedlings germinate, it needs to touch a plant within a couple of days. If it doesn't, those seedlings die. So it's really important to stay on it and get it out as soon as you can possibly see it. And then if you do pull it out, it takes a couple years or a couple of days for those plants to die off too. So it's kind of a cool plant. It's yellow. It doesn't make photosynthesis sugars from its green tissue. It uses the sugar from the host plant and sucks its nutrients that way. So it's pretty cool, but it can be hard to control. And we can control with post-emergent herbicides, but those are probably going to kill our desirable plants too. So it really is a manual cultivation and try to remove whenever possible.
Okay, and I think it's more of a problem usually central and west. I think that's where we usually
It says
hear about it.
in the book, it says from Nebraska to California. So it's kind of...
Okay, Kevin. Shrooms.
Yeah.
And this particular person is saying they are bigger and badder than ever. They've tried vinegar, dish soap, and an expensive antifungal treatment, and picking them by hand to get all of the root underground structure. They want to know how to get rid of them unless you think they should eat them.
Well, given their yellowish color and that they're a little bit brown on top, they have a very short stalk, and then underneath their gills have a netted venation, so it's almost like a net-like network of veins underneath that cap. So I think it's what's called the gyrodon fungus. So I'd be willing to bet that that viewer has ash trees in their yard, because this particular fungus likes dead roots or dead plant material from ash trees. What can we do to get rid of them? That's a great question. I think if someone ever figures out a great way to do that, they're going to be a millionaire. Hand removal is about the best way to do it. Spraying something onto the lawn to try to discourage those fungi is not practical. We don't really have a product right now that we sell to do that. So removing your ash trees is one way, but you can just wait a while for the boar to do that. Otherwise, just keep removing them by hand or practice your golf swing with them. Like that.
So we're going to see an explosion of them when the ash borer comes.
That's probably true. If we have a lot of dead ash material, those fungi are going to go crazy.
Well, I guess one thing follows another, right? Okay, Jeff, an Omaha viewer has columnar arborvitae that are quite close to the house, and he didn't realize they were going to get that big. He wonders if he can cut off the very top, and whether he can get anything, what can he do to keep them from engulfing the gutter? So can he top to begin with, and then some way to push the tops away a few inches but still keep them there without cutting them down?
Sure, right. Well, this time of year is not the ideal time to do heavy pruning on our evergreens, although considering going into winter, I don't know if I would want to have that sitting over my gutters going into winter. So, absolutely, you could go in and take that off, take those sections off. They will regrow over time. So I've had good luck with junipers and arborvitae doing some heavy pruning when we've had to, and they will regrow and reform that columnar shape. So probably the reality is we need to consider maybe something else. Those plants are going to continue to want to do that and engulf your home. They were just planted too close. So.
Exactly, and they look pretty healthy.
Yeah,
especially for
they're
arborvitae.
happy where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have one announcement of a very cool thing in the gardening world, and that would be we are going to be at the State Fair next week. We'll be there live answering questions from 1:30 to 3 in the afternoon. 4 to 5 o'clock, our great NET partners join us. We go live to tape, and then we are on Thursday next week, not Tuesday, at 7 p.m. So we get to go back to our old time for our very last show of the season. So come out, eat a fried thing on a stick, and ask us some questions. Speaking of which,
I won't be there.
I know. So you have to answer this question here and now. Where can this particular person get mason bees?
Mason bees?
Mason bees.
Well, they're wild, so what you need to do is provide the habitat for them. One of our newer NEB guides actually has the specifications on what you would need to do to make your own bee nesting block, and mason bees are included as far as the hole size you would need to drill.
Okay, and if you want to see really cool examples, they're in our backyard farmer garden of the bee houses. All right, this is a Jacobson County Viewer, a lawn question. They have crabgrass and clover taking over, Bill. We have about 45 seconds. What should they use to get rid of it? And do you water before or after you put whatever it is down that you're going to kill it with?
Don't water after you put it down. Don't worry about the crabgrass. It's going to die soon anyways. But do Triclopure or a 3-way product to take care of the clover in the fall. And generally fertilize your lawnmower. It's probably thin, and that's why you have these weed issues. 2 or 3 applications next year to really build that density up, and then you can back off in future years.
Okay, excellent. 10 seconds or less, Kevin, since you're on the spot.
All righty. Let's see
What
I
is
can
the
do.
white mildewy thing on the squash plants? This is northern Buffalo County. Anything they should do about it?
If it's just on the leaves, I'm assuming it's powdery mildew. And again, with this particular fungal disease, unlike the others, you can actually spray it off with a hose. Otherwise, try to increase airflow and sunlight.